Morning everyone. Welcome to the pattern drafter demonstration. My name's Maria and I'm the inventor of the pattern drafter. The pattern drafter was developed 11 years ago when I felt there was a need for an easy way to make patterns that actually fit. So you've got commercial patterns which sometimes fit, sometimes don't. You've got off-the-rack clothes that are a bit of a nightmare sometimes. As a pattern drafter myself and as a teacher for over 20 years and a dressmaker, I saw the need to develop a ruler that anybody can use. So it's developed for a raw beginner through to someone that's advanced. So the way you use the pattern drafter is that you make a block pattern. So a block pattern is the start of every garment, every commercial pattern, every handmade pattern. You have to start with what's called a block pattern. So you might look at a commercial pattern book, which is about that thick, and it says it's got 10,000 designs. It actually has got 10,000 designs. However, there's only 4 block patterns in it. Okay. So manufacturers, they have their 4 block patterns, and this is for men, women and children. So your 4 block patterns are your dress block, which is your torso. So anything to do with making a dress or a jacket or a top, a shirt, blouse, men, women or children, that's your dress block, your torso block. Then you've got your sleeve block, your pants block and a collar block. And that's all you need. The difference between making a pattern yourself and buying one is that when you make your own pattern, you're making it to your formula of measurements. So it doesn't matter if you're short, long, big here, small there, it's your formula of measurements. It's not a size. A size is the manufacturer's interpretation of who their customer is. So that's why if you go into one store that's like Katie's, you might fit into a size 12, but if you go to another store, you need to go bigger or smaller and so forth. So sizing, don't concern yourself with that. It's more to do with your measurements, and that's where making your own pattern to your formula of measurements is going to ensure that you have that perfect fit, or have the fit the way you want it to fit. So with the ruler, what you're looking at is that the front of the ruler does the front of your pattern for your dress, and it also does your pants. The back of the pattern does the back of the pattern for your dress, and it does your sleeve. And it also does your collar pattern. So your collar patterns is your right angle and your French curve. The instruction book, design and instruction book that comes with it, goes through step by step how to make your block pattern, how to take your measurements and how to make your block pattern from start to finish. It also shows you how you would adjust the pattern. So if you've got a full bust adjustment or a sway back or rounded shoulders, the instruction book shows you how. And as you can see by the instruction book, it's not a huge book, okay? So if you're looking at a system where the book says volume 1 or volume 10, you know that it's going to be a little bit more complicated. But when you look at a booklet like this, that's beautifully set out and help you through how to make all of your block patterns. The other reason I developed this was that when I did teach pattern making, we would take 30 measurements to do a dress block. With this, you only need 7 measurements to do your dress block. So it is a much quicker version. We use right angle rulers and French curves. Well, these are your right angles and these are your French curves. You'll also see that the measurements are in there, and they're in alphabetical order, each table. So the measurements that are in there are already quartered, because you're only making a quarter of the pattern. So that's already quartered. So for example, if your bust measurement is 80, you mark it at 80. If it's 136, you mark it at 136, and anywhere in between. You can also increase those measurements or decrease the measurement. Okay? Your bust start and your waist start is included in the makeup of the pattern. So therefore you're not making something that resembles a sack. sack of potatoes, and then having to adjust it to the body. You actually are making a beautifully fitting pattern to begin with, that's in your measurements. And ease is built in, so you've got room to move. And then it's time to do the minor adjustments. And the minor adjustments might be that, you know, you prefer it a little bit tighter or a little bit looser, or you don't want the shape of the waist coming in, so you want to straighten it out. You want to leave your waist darts open because you want a little bit more fullness. If I'm making a jacket, I want it a little bit more fitted, but if I'm making a coat, I want it straighter. So from your block patterns, once you've made your block patterns and you've tried them on and you've made any minor adjustments that you need to, that is your template for all patterns. So with that one pattern, you can make a pair of pajamas right through to a wedding dress. There is no limit, because as I said before, everything starts with a block pattern. And that's what you're using this template for, to make a block pattern for yourself, family members, or anyone else that you wish to make.
And does that include your seam allowance as well?
No, no block patterns have seam allowance. Seam allowance are added afterwards. So if you are in manufacturing, for example, you would have a range of block patterns in sizes that suit your customer base. And then from there, you would add seam allowance. So you can copy your original pattern and add seam allowance. But if you've got a block pattern, which I'll show you, I'll draw it up shortly, and you want to make a princess line, this is a military line because it goes to the shoulder. So on my block pattern, I would draw that line, find the centre of the shoulder, go through the waist darts to the hemline, and then I would cut that pattern, add a seam allowance, sew it back to its original form, and then you're left with a feature.
Oh,
So that's why there's no seam allowance to your original pattern, because when you modify it to get your different designs, you can't have seam allowance on there.
Yeah.
But once you've made your block, and then you've made copies of your block pattern, because that's your template, and then you want to make, you know, this jacket or this top and so forth, that's when you would add in any adjustments, any design feature, and then that's where you would add your seam allowance.
Thank you.
And then you can make another copy of that with the seam allowance. I know with my patterns there are no seam allowance. I have to add seam allowance constantly, so it's a trigger for me. But if you're used to working with seam allowance, you just add them to your pattern after you've modified them.
Yeah.
Very good question. And ease is built in, so there's 4 centimetres already built in to the makeup of the pattern. Is there any other questions at this stage? Okay, so I want to show you how to draw a pattern, and you don't normally do it on a whiteboard, but I will be today. So the measurements that you need for a dress block, you need 7 measurements to do your dress block, you need 3 measurements to do your sleeve block, 3 measurements to do your pants block, and 1 measurement to do your collar. So your 7 measurements are your waist length, your bust, your waist, your hips, your bust distance, your bust length, and your skirt length. The measurements are in that order. That's the order we're going to use. So I'm going to draw the front of the block pattern. Therefore, I'm going to use the front of the ruler. And you always start by drawing a right angle. So I'm going to draw on that side. So right angle along the left-hand side and across the top. And then I'm going to mark in my waist length at A, my bust measurement at B, my bust measurement at C, and then mark in the 2 neckline markings. So that was step 1. Right angle, marking my waist length, my bust measurement, and the shoulder. And as you can see, it's in alphabetical order, and I've got the markings for the 2 neckline markings there. The next step is to bring the ruler down so it lines up with the mark I made at B, and I'm drawing another right angle across the top, and this time marking in the bust measurement at D. So that was the next step. And now it's a matter of joining dots. So once you've got those measurements in and marked in alphabetical order, it's a matter of joining dots. So I'm going to join C to the top neckline marking. So, and that forms my shoulder. I'm now going to turn my ruler upside down and I'm locating the neck curve. Now the words always face you. If the words aren't facing you, you're not holding the ruler in the right position. So I'm going to place the neck curve marking at the bottom and continue it with the top neckline marking. And there's my neckline. From that position, I'm turning the ruler to the right and you'll see E. Again, you're following the alphabet. Does everyone know their alphabet? Oh, you can use scissors. So I'm locating the bust measurement at E and placing that on D and corresponding it with C. So there to there. And then drawing in the armhole. And that is E. Okay, so that's 3 months of study just there that you can do. From that position, I bring the ruler back into its upright position, and I've done A, B, C, D, E. The next letter, ladies, the next letter is F. Very good. So F is on the bottom of the ruler, so I need to bring the ruler back in its upright position. F is used for waist and hips. So I'm going to place the bottom of the ruler at A, draw a horizontal line along the bottom and marking the waist measurement. And because your measurement's already calculated for you, there's no chance of making a mistake because you're not dividing, subtracting and so forth. So that was my waist measurement. I'm going to use a normal 30 centimetre ruler and I'm going to add 3 centimetres to the right of my waist measurement. And the reason for that is I'm going to put in a waist dart for my block pattern. So you're putting in the darts straight away because we've already done the measurements of where everything is. So from F, you join it to D, like so. And now I've drawn to the waist. From A, I'm going to measure down 20 centimetres and that'll be the hip line. So that's 20 centimetres. From there to there. And again, I'm going to use F at the 20 centimetre point, horizontal line across the bottom, and marking what your hip measurement is. And it could be anything from 60 centimetres to 138 centimetres. So it'll do a size 8 through to a size 30. And again, that can be increased and decreased. So I'm going to join the hips, which is F, to the waist of F, but it's not a straight line because we do have curves. I'm going to use the hip curve. So if I turn the ruler to the right, you can see the word hip curve with an arrow. You place the arrow at the hip line, correspond it with the waist, and drawing the hip curve, like so. So far we've used the waist length, the bust, the waist, and the hips. So the measurements are taken in that order because that's the order that you are making up your pattern. The next thing we need to do is put in our bust and waist darts. So that's where our bust distance and our bust length come into play. So when you're taking your measurements, and it does go through step by step how to take your measurements, there's also an online tutorial where it not only shows you how to take your measurements, but how to draw your pattern, how to do adjustments and so forth. So I've got some flyers there, but it's Draft T Studio, .com is where you would find that. So your first 4 videos are free, and then you can opt to purchase the rest. Okay, but that way you can see how to take measurements. So with our bust distance, we're actually going from point to point. That's the only measurement you have to halve, because we're doing half the front. So if my bust points are 22 centimetres, half of that is 11. So 11 is what I'm marking. This is your centre front. So we go across the top 11 centimetres, at the shoulder, at the bust, at the waist, and at the hips. Okay, so I've just marked 11 centimetres from the centre front across at each point, and then I'm going to draw a reference line through each of the markings. So that reference line, that's where your waist dart would be. Along there, that's where your seam would be. Okay, so that's a great reference point. And then that was your bust distance. With your bust length, you're then measuring from the shoulder down to the bust point. So you're playing battleship, working out where your bust sits, which is great, because how many times have we had darts in the wrong place and awkward darts? So with the bust length, we now draw a reference line going across, and so X marks the spot. That's where our bust point is. Now we pick up the pattern drafter again, front, and you'll see there's a bust circle. So you line up the bust circle at your intersection and draw in your bust circle. And what that gives you is a clearance of 2 centimetres from your darts, because you don't want your darts coming to a point, you know, you don't want to look like Madonna. So we need a clearance. So that circle gives you the perfect clearance. So now it's time to draw in the darts. I've added 3 centimetres for a waist dart. The reference line becomes the centre of the dart. So you mark 1.5 on either side of that. So all I've done is move that 3 centimetres across. And then from the waist down, your front dart is 12 centimetres in length. So I've measured down 12 centimetres. And now it's a matter of drawing it. So you start at the outer edge of the circle, go out to the 1.5, down to the 12, back up to the 1.5, and back up to the outer edge of the circle. So that's your waist dart. With your bust dart, back when I taught it, we actually had to cut the waist, drop it 2 centimetres and raise the armhole 1 centimetre. And that's where girls and guys that would do in pattern making would get very confused. They wouldn't add a bust dart. You have to add a bust dart with this, because there's already an allowance of 3 centimetres there. So when you draw the back's going to be 3 centimetres shorter. And to put it in, all you need to do is use the reference line as the centre of the dart and mark 1.5 on either side and draw in your dart like so. Now that 3 centimetres is the starting point. Obviously if you need a full bust adjustment, that will increase when you do that, and so forth. And all of that is in the book step by step, and it's on the online videos step by step as well. So we've just done the bust length. The last thing is to do your skirt length, and this is going to be a very short skirt or a top. Can be a top. So you're measuring from the waist down to what your skirt length or top length needs to be. So we're just going to make this one 30 centimetres, and then you place the bottom of the ruler at that hemline and draw your line across. So that measurement that's there will be the same. So therefore, if that was my hip measurement, I'm just going to use the hip measurement that's on the ruler. There, and then join the two together. So that'll be the skirt length or the top length. And the other thing you'll need is a grain line. So your grain line parallels your centre front. And because my reference line parallels my centre front, I can actually use the ruler on that reference line. And there's a convenient slot in there. And I can draw in my grain line like so. Okay. And then after that, it's a little bit of tweaking. You don't want any really sharp corners in dressmaking. So when you, for example, sew up your dart, you don't pivot at the waist. You don't pivot at the waist, do you, ladies? No, it's a no-no. So you smooth it out. Because if you do pivot anywhere, it's going to pucker and you need to then cut the seam to release it, which then lends itself to fraying and so forth. In some cases you do. If you're doing bridal and corsetry and something very fitted, you do have to do that. But other than that, you need to just smooth things out, and one of the lines that you would smooth out is at the waist. You just smooth that out so you're not pivoting. So ease has been added to that. The line that you have drawn is your sewing line. So therefore you would then add seam allowance. Now this is your block pattern and you're going to try it on. So for trying it on, and you saw the one I did for Elizabeth, I added seam allowance at the side seam, okay, and at the shoulder, but you don't add any seam allowance at the neckline and the armhole because you want to see where that sits. This is just to try on your block pattern, it's not to make a garment. And then once you've tried it on and you've done any adjustments, and we'll see on Elizabeth what adjustments need to be done, then that's ready. That's ready to go. And we've done it on calico for Elizabeth so she can try it on and a full length. But I normally do it on a trace, like it's medium weight Vilene, and sew it on there. So you can actually try that. You can actually sew it and try that on as well. So that's what I make my patterns out of, and that's how I keep my patterns as well, because paper deteriorates, and that works really well. So if we say that this is all done, we've tried it on, it's perfect, and now we want to do a design, and here's one I prepared earlier, as in last night. So this has got princess line, and it's got sweetheart neckline. So the way you would do that, you can, if you've got a favourite commercial pattern, please don't think you've got to get rid of your commercial patterns. You can still use them. If you've got a favourite commercial pattern and it's got a lovely neckline that you like, you can actually superimpose it over your block pattern and trace any design that's on there. Or if you're adding fullness to your skirt and you don't know how much, you can measure the fullness on that. And it's the same with the existing garment. So if you wanted to make this jacket and you like the neckline, you can actually superimpose your pattern over an existing garment and copy the neckline. Because that's all design, and there's no copyright to it because you're only making it for yourself. You're not making it to reproduce in the thousands. And people say, oh, I don't have much of an idea of design. You don't have to have a particular design. This top that I've made, I've just done a boat neck, which is in the book, and added a sleeve and so forth. So you can keep things plain, and I've made this pattern over and over in 20 different fabrics, and therefore get 20 different looks. So I may have probably a dozen patterns that I use. But if you wanted to make this, you're doing a sweetheart neckline. So your sweetheart neckline starts here and goes up like that. That shoulder is a full shoulder from there to there. So because it's sleeveless, I've trimmed it away more, like that. And then to do the princess line, I've gone up from the top of the waist dart out to the side. Or I could have gone to the shoulder to have the military look. But you wouldn't do a military look if this is not very wide because you've got very close seams together. You do it more on something that's got a sleeve perhaps. So this is my sewing and that's my cutting. And you'll notice I only add a centimetre seam allowance because you know the patterns fit. So I'm not wasting fabric by adding more. I do sometimes put in a 1.5 centimetre seam allowance if it's a very loosely woven fabric that frays or a suiting fabric. I will put in a 1.5 centimetre. I find with beginners using a 1.5 centimetre on a curve such as an armhole neckline is very difficult for them. So that's why I recommend just the 1 centimetre. If you're making something stretch, so you'll notice that this is stretch, and I don't have any darts, okay, yet it's fitted. So if it's a stretch fabric, the line that I've drawn, the vertical line that I've drawn, is my cutting line. And then I come in just that 0.5 centimetre, which is your 4-thread overlocker. But if it's a horizontal line, such as the neckline or hemline, I add seam allowance. Okay? But any vertical lines, you don't have to add any seam allowance. And with your waist dart, you can either leave it open, so it's a looser fit. You can close it for a more fitted look, so that's been closed, and that's been closed. And I don't have a waist dart here, but yet it's still fitted. So what I've done is, rather than come out 3 centimetres at the waist, I haven't added the 3 centimetres. So from under the arm, I've come in 3 and gone out to the hip. So I haven't added that. To get rid of the bust dart, this is 3 centimetres longer than the back. So to get rid of the bust dart, all I do is from the waist, fold it up 1.5 centimetres, which equates to 3 centimetres. Okay. Is there any questions? It's great. That's good. That's and it's very easy to do. Oh, and here's our model. Here's our model. Introducing Elizabeth, our famous model. And I'm glad you tried it on inside out. That's exactly what you need to do. I'm just going to pin you at the back. So she's incognito with her mask on. She's not silly. Alright, so this is a pattern that you guys saw me draw when you came in, and you know that, it didn't take me long. It probably took me 10 minutes to draw it up.
But that's because you're experienced.
Yeah. Look, it might take you...
Might take me a bit longer than that.
It might take you an afternoon to draw it up, but by the time you open up a pattern that you might have and cut it out and measure it and work it out,
And then
it'll take you longer.
The time you save when you're doing future ones as well, because you just
Yeah.
Okay. So the first thing you check is the neckline. So our neckline is fine. I find that it's more posture sometimes. So if you've got someone that's very rounded and it'll be too tight there, we all just went like this. Yeah. Or stretch up, yes. Do your yoga. But this neckline's fine, and the shoulders are fine. And then you check to see where the bust darts are in the right place. And if they're not, because it's not something that you print out a pattern, you actually draw it. So if you find that you've made a mistake, you can redraw it. And one of the things people do have problem is locating the waist. So my daughter thinks her waist is down here because that's where she wears her clothes. Your waist is actually quite high, so it's just below the rib cage. Okay, so I wear my pants here, but my waist is there, so it's your natural waist, which is the smallest part of your body. Yep.
That's where my rib cage is.
Yep. Well, there you go. That's
I
where
always
I drew.
think of my waist as being right there, sitting on top of my hip.
And if you haven't got it in at the waist, if you've got it too low, your darts are then down here. So you need your darts to the middle of the darts.
If you don't have much of a waist, like if it's sort of just goes right up
underneath your boobs, where would you go then?
It's
Where
still,
would you measure then?
yeah, it's still the bottom of your ribs.
Just the bottom of
and
your
you
ribs.
do go in. Everyone,
This
my
bit
mum,
or
my
up
mum's
here?
just there,
Just a bit up
just
here.
there.
Yeah, you can
Yeah,
feel it.
it's
Yeah,
quite
you
high.
can feel
Not
it.
the,
Yeah,
because I guess,
yeah.
yeah.
Because my mum's about a size 20, but she thinks she's a 14 because she's got a T-shirt that says 14, so she's claimed that she's a 14.
Nothing wrong with that, I like
no.
that.
So her, and she's only this tall, so her measurement is very close, just under her bust.
Yep.
Yeah, and therefore I never close darts for her. I leave them open because there's only about that much from her waist
Yep.
to her bust point. So you leave it open. But what the other dart I do for her too is it's called a French dart, where you go from there to there,
Okay. Yep.
and that's very flattering as well for someone that doesn't have a waist. Yeah, so I can show you how to do that. But back to Elizabeth. So if you could face the ladies, so we'll have a look at the back as well. So you can see with the back, it fits beautifully. There's not much to do to Elizabeth's pattern other than maybe yeah, you do. Other than at the hip line. So you take 3 measurements for the hips. So we measured the tummy, the hips, and then the thighs. And the second measurement was the largest. So therefore, you could take it in a little bit here, but it's personal preference. If Elizabeth likes it loose, she can have it loose. If she wants her garment to be a bit tighter, she can come in a bit more at the waist and be tighter. You can come in at the bust a bit more, at the waist darts a bit more, and be tighter there. Now there's 2 block patterns that you will make. And the beauty of trying it on is then you've got your 2 block patterns because you only need half of the front and half of the back. So one is for a sleeve block and one is for a sleeveless block. So if we say that this side is for a sleeve, we can see that there's room there and the armhole finishes there. Okay. So if it's a sleeve, you need to drop the armhole 1.5 centimeters. This is in the book. So you drop it 1.5 centimeters. We've got to find the edge of the shoulder, which is about here. This would be fine if it was seam allowance, but we don't have any seam allowance on this pattern. So that's where I would cut it for Elizabeth, plus 1.5 centimeters lower. And the room that you've got is plenty for a sleeve, so we need that. The other side, on the other side, we're going to do this as for a sleeveless. So for a sleeveless, we would come in more. We don't drop the armhole unless you prefer to have it, because it's personal preference now. You know, the work's been done. Now it's up to you how you would like it. So if you'd like a bit more room under the arm, by all means cut it down further. This is going to be for a sleeveless, so that's where I would cut it. We don't need to have any excess unless, again, you prefer it. So the way to get rid of it here, we don't have a full bust adjustment, but we can lift it from the shoulder here. Okay, so we can take away. Everybody's unique. Every body is equivalent to your fingerprint. So, you know, you and I might be the same measurement, but we're not the same shape. So everybody is unique, and everybody is unique. And so don't think, oh, I'm weird because I've got this or whatever. You're not. You're special. And that's why you need to try it on to get that perfect fit. So this can be cut away. This can be raised. So you've got your centre. This would be for your sleeveless pattern. That would be for your sleeved pattern. And it's the same at the back. Okay? And Elizabeth might say, oh, I never wear anything sleeveless. No. However, you might wear a camisole. You might make yourself a slip. So with my summer dresses, I buy a lot of fabric from you, don't I, Elizabeth, here at the House of Cloth? I come in and I go, I don't want any fabric, I've got plenty. I go, oh, that's new, I'll have that and I'll have this. And I bought that, as you can see, the other day. That's just arrived. Oh, okay, well, let's make a dress. So a lot of the linens, because I love that they're so beautiful natural fabrics here, a lot of the linens, rather than lining them, I make myself a petticoat. So a petticoat that's just cut on the bias, so it's sleeveless. You know, it's sleeveless, it's got a deepened collar and so forth, and then I'm washing the petticoat more than I'm washing the dress, because I've only worn the dress for an hour. So you air it out and so forth. But it also means you're not lining your dresses or your dresses. You can just bind them. So there are times where you will make something sleeveless, regardless. And so if I let go, you did use a really big stitch, didn't you?
I did, but I may have backstitched. One of these sides I backstitched.
That's okay. So if I take out, just to show you that you can leave it, it still looks nice, even if you don't want it fitted. And a lot of my summer dresses, I have the waist darts left open and just close the back darts. Even some of my tops and some shell tops, they're really great to make up in the quilting fabric as well, because it's good quality fabric. And so you don't have to have it always fitted. You don't always want a fitted garment. Also too, on the side, you'll see on the side that it comes in at the waist. You can actually straighten that. So from D, if I could just go back to the board, from D to F, you can draw a straight line, and that way it's not as fitted, but it's still your bust measurement and it's still your hip measurement. So you're still going to get that lovely fit. Okay, so we're all about the fit, the perfect fit. So you've got the confidence to wear a calico dress out if you need to. You don't. It's the fabrics are fantastic. We've got beautiful fabrics from Australia and around the world, and we've got embellishments that we can put on them left, right and centre. We've got machines that sew themselves, but if you don't have the right pattern, all that work and all that money, you know yourself, you just haven't got the confidence to sew, thinking, oh, is my pattern right? This is more of a guarantee that you can get the pattern right. And once you've got your block, Elizabeth's got a block there now, she can make millions of dresses. And anything. We look forward to seeing all these dresses.
Can you use
So do
this
I.
system to alter existing patterns?
So when
if you have if you have a dress pattern that you really like, but it doesn't quite fit in a few spots, can you use this system to?
The easiest way to do it is first of all, when you buy a pattern, a ready-made pattern, commercial or otherwise, they've started with a block, and then they've put the design on there. You have to take that design off and then alter the block, and then put the design back on.
Okay.
So that's why sometimes it doesn't work if it's a complicated design. What I would suggest is you've got your block pattern, you've got the picture of what you want to make, alter your block pattern, modify your block pattern to suit the picture, and because you've got the picture and you've got the pattern, use the the armhole shape, use the neckline shape, use the circumference of the skirt, pockets, whatever. So you can incorporate it. If it's a very simple design, by all means you can superimpose the whole thing over your commercial pattern and alter it. But every system is different. So if you know this fits, Elizabeth knows this fits, so if she's got an existing pattern, she can now turn that into that design. Sometimes it's easier, other times you're better off just using what you've got, and modifying it that way. But the same pattern can be used over and over again, and this outfit, which I'm grateful still fits, is 10 years old.
So you made your pants as well?
Yes, So I can't find pants to fit me because I have no bottom and hips, but I'm straight up and down. And so if I try on pants that fit around the waist, they're too big here. If they fit here, they're too small here. I can't get them up. Do them up. And because there's this empty space here of a flat bum, I feel like I've got my dad's pants on sometimes when I try some on. So these have been modified to suit me. I like a bootleg because that's the ideal style for my body shape.
Yeah.
And they're you know, it's good quality fabric, and thankfully they still fit. And you know, this is merino wool, so it lasts. You know, you can then choose whether you want to try it out in a good fabric or a cheaper fabric, or you know, good fabrics are always so beautifully and do last. And even, you know, silk lining, whatever you want to use. I'm sure everyone's got a big stash at home that we need to use. I know I do. Is there another? Yes, always. So that's ladies' pattern. Thank you, Elizabeth.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
Is Kawal going to come and do the men's pattern?
Oh, Kawal, it's time to do the no, he's saying no. He's already going, no way. So you can use this for men, women and children. Oh, you don't want to wear it all day?
No, I'm not warm enough.
You're not warm enough, sorry. You could make it out of wool, so you can be warm enough. So this is used for men and women, so it's a unisex one. Then we've got the children's pattern drafter. It's my little baby. So with the children's one, you do exactly the same process, except of course there's no darts. So it's very, very easy to use, and you know, get a lot of new mums that wanting to start sewing, you know, pick up on it, grandmas of course, and use it to even make a range of clothing. At the moment I'm doing some patterns for Rock and Roll Club. So we're making all the patterns for the little ones, because you can't buy little rock and roll outfits. Yeah, so it's great for that. This will do 6 months through to a 16-year-old child. And then you go to the adult version. So this starts at 48 centimetres and goes to 90 centimetres for the chest, waist and hips. And then this starts at 80 centimetres. So you've got that 10 centimetre overlap, because you might have a big child, but you know, a boy that doesn't need a bust, or you might have a busty 12-year-old. So then you would go to this one. Yeah. So the two combine together, and they're 100% Australian made. So the plastic, the printing, the book printing, that's all done here in Australia. It's actually done here in Bendigo. So that was the adult book. There is another book. So if you, as I said, the ruler's been out for 11 years. If you've purchased your ruler prior to May this year, you will have the older version of the book. So if you wanted to update, and even if you want to, if you've got the newer version and would like further information, this is the e-book that's out. So this is downloadable online. So this is $25. And in here you've got the further adjustments to do your different designs, and lots of new designs as well that you will see how to modify your pattern. So this is online for downloadable, and then you can go to Officeworks and print it out, or print it at home, and so forth. And with the children's ruler, you get this book, which is very comprehensive, and it goes through how to take all the measurements and how to do your various designs. So it deals with newborn, toddler outfits, right through to boys, the basic stuff, pyjamas, dressing gowns, wind cheaters, shirts, some dresses for the girls, party clothes, you know, ballerina style things, and coats and so forth. And design is a design, so if you look at a child's design and want to implement it into an adult version, you can, because that's a design. And here's one of the designs that's in the children's book, just a little shift dress. So that's a great one for beginners to do. And you can also use it as a pinafore, so you can do it out of a winter fabric and put something underneath it, or put leggings with it and so forth. So that's just a little taste of what the children's ruler has. So with the pricing, so your rulers are UV screen printed, so the print won't rub off, because you know we've all got those little rulers that the print rubs off. So this, I made sure the print doesn't rub off, because it's a lifetime investment. It's not a design, it's a block pattern that you're making. With the adult ruler, with its book, is $1.99, or as someone said once, that's 20 patterns. And for today, for being here, you also get a free carry bag with that. And all of these are available online, of course. And with the children's one, it's $1.39 for the children's book and ruler. And the other sale that we have today is that if you purchase the two, you get a free bag and you save $74. So the two along with the bag are $2.99 for the two. And you can purchase those through Elizabeth. So Koal's got the dog making all sorts of signs. He's trying to put me off, isn't he? So you can purchase these from Elizabeth. So you're buying locally. So you're purchasing from her, not from me, and therefore supporting your local business. But thank you, ladies, for your attention. I'm here for a bit longer if you've got any questions you'd like to ask.
Just a quick question.
Yeah.
Things like, so I think the short waisted would be dealt with in your measurements.
In your measurements, yeah, when you measure the waist
The
length.
things like sloping shoulders or sway back,
Yes.
is that done after you've done your block?
It's yes afterwards.
Yeah.
So any adjustments, this is the rules. You must
Yep.
follow these
Yeah.
rules. Once you've got it on the body, that's when you can tailor make it for that body.
To address any,
Any issues. So any of the sway backs, any of the sloping shoulders. A lot of people have, everyone's left is different to their right, but in some cases it's more prominent. You know, it could be that, you know, you because of your hip, or one leg's longer than the other, or just a very sloping shoulder. Could be medical issues. There's issues also too with disability problems. That if someone's, you know, permanently in a wheelchair and so forth, and you need to make special garments for them that are easily removed and so forth. So any of those issues are dealt with after your
doing
pattern's
the block,
been drawn.
Yep.
So that's your starting point. That's a flat block pattern. You then put it on the three-dimensional body and deal with anything that needs to be addressed, whether it be for the shape of the person or just for comfort.
And then that
also
potentially
life.
becomes your block.
Correct.
Yeah.
So this then becomes your permanent block. That's your template.
Yeah.
Once it's been adjusted. So on Elizabeth's one, she'll have two patterns. We're going to transfer that on to Trace, so because you don't keep a calico pattern for very long, that doesn't last. So we're going to transfer all of that on Trace, and that'll be her template. I put them in just Ziploc Ziploc bags, and write on there. You know, block pattern. I put the date. I put the measurements on there. There is a measurement chart at the back of the ruler. At the back of the book, sorry. There's a measurement chart that you can photocopy and put in all those measurements. It also tells you which table are you know, A for your waist length, B for your bust and so forth that you are using. So, and that's a good one to keep, especially when you go back to your pattern and you can re-measure yourself or whoever you're doing it for. and have a look at you know, what the measurements were and so forth. And if you're like me, you just keep increasing them slowly to get to where you'd like.
Well, it's good, isn't it? Because you're making clothes to fit you rather than changing yourself to fit into
Well,
clothes.
it's all about
Yeah.
feeling confident in wearing what you're wearing, you know, and like this jacket is made for me. It's you know, if I try it on a jacket, I'm very small across here, so if I try on a 10, it fits here, but it doesn't fit across here. So then, therefore, I can tailor it to my measurements, and nothing more. Yeah.
Is it the excuse me? Is it the same principle for the male body in terms of chest width and
Yeah. So
weights
you
and-
measure the male body.
Yeah.
Obviously, they don't have a bust up.
No.
So that's when you would, from the waist, go up 1.5 centimetres to get rid of that extra 3 centimetres. Yeah.
And is that detailed in the instructions?
Yes. And the shoulder is much wider for a man, so you would measure their shoulder across.
Yeah.
And if you go across more, you must drop the armhole further.
Yeah.
That's where the online tutorials are really good, because they do deal with the male, how to alter it for a man.
Mhm.
And Trish, who's one of my ambassadors, she's done the online classes. She's going to be doing some sewing ones next year as well, so a continuation of that. Yeah.
And how do you know what adjustments you need? So once you've made up your block,
Mhm.
and like you're talking about full bust adjustments and,
Yep.
and things like that, like how will you know which ones are the right ones?
Yeah. So if it's a full bust adjustment, when I make my pattern, if it's for a sleeve, as this one is, I leave, see how that extra? I leave it. If it's a sleeveless one, I don't want this extra bit. There's gaping. So this has had a full bust adjustment. This is Matilda, everyone. So this is my dress, and as you can see, it's beautifully fitted around there, but I've taken out the gaping. So there was a lot of gaping there, and I've taken it out. Yeah, so you know as soon as you've got it on that there's too much gaping, and sometimes there's gaping depending on the roundness of the shoulder. There's gaping the back of the armhole as well. So that's when you'll do the full bust adjustment. And a full bust adjustment, what that entails, we didn't have it with Elizabeth, but I can show you on here. If you've got gaping there, when you try it on, not at this point, it's when you try it on, and you've got gaping, what you're doing is you're taking that out. So you might have that much that you have pinched in, and you do it on the person. So then you've got two darts. You've got that dart and that dart, and that's a no-no. But remember, this is just your pattern. So what you want to do is the value of this dart needs to go into the bust. And the way you do it is you cut open the bust dart, cut open that bust dart, and you close the dart in the armhole. And when you close that dart automatically opens up. So the value of that dart's gone into there. So if this was 2 centimetres and this was 3, that dart in the end will now be 5 centimetres. So it will look like, it'll look like that. It'll open up. Okay, and that line is not shown then in any of your finished garments. Okay, that armhole becomes smaller. This becomes wider. So I can show you that here. What page is it, Coel?
You can't remember, right?
You can't remember. Coel helped me design this book. Okay, so I don't know if you can see it there. You can have a look, pass around. So it's not in the finished garment. There is no arm dart. Okay, that's actually a no-no.
Mm.
And that's increased. And when you close it, it still lines up with your back. You've just got a bigger bust down. Yeah. This one's been incorporated into the princess line, so that makes it easier. But it's still started off as that, and then I've put in the princess line. So that's how you know. You know yourself. I'm not happy with that. It's not right. It doesn't feel right. And it could be that sometimes it needs pointing out, and other times, it doesn't. But it is personal preference. If I'm making a little shift top to wear around the house, or it's going to be a nightie or whatever, I don't mind that it's loose because that's how you want it. Yeah, it's always personal preference. Is there any other questions?
You don't sell these directly?
No,
This one particular?
you order it online, and it's then download it, and then you can read it as on your computer or iPad, or you can put it on a stick, take it to Officeworks and get it printed.
Oh,
Mm.
okay.
But this book also that comes with the ruler.
You've got that.
Yeah. Well, that actually has full bust adjustments and sway back adjustments. So all the adjustments are in this book as well. Yeah. That's just a further information. Well, thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
Appreciate you coming.
Thank you.
And I'll be here a little bit longer if you need to have a chat or a demonstration of anything else. But thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.